Okay, so these are the worst financial mistakes to make in your 20s. In our 20s, you're going to deal with a lot of hardship, a lot of things going on that you can't predict. And even then, there's still going to be some kind of huge mistakes that hopefully you'll be able to get past and not make early on. Or if you do make them, hopefully you're able to bounce back quickly from them because these are very huge and could affect a lot in your 20s. So, with that being said, let's get started. The first one we have is lifestyle inflation. This is every time you get a raise and your spending starts to rise up and match the raise or the income and money that you get. And from this, you never actually build wealth because you're just upgrading your life over and over. I've seen it time and time again where people end up getting, an extra $2 an hour at their job, or they get like a $10,000 salary, or they get a bonus, or they get their taxes and anything, and they just spend it over and over and match their lifestyle. So now, if they went from 20 an hour to 23 an hour, they're now spending at 23 an hour when they could have just saved the extra $3 an hour they were making and used that for something else. This is a big, huge thing that's happening over and over. And I won't lie, out of all the financial mistakes, this one might actually be the hardest one to break through because a lot of times when you do upgrade your life and get more money, you don't even notice the difference. Like I remember, I had went from 19 an hour to 23 an hour, and the difference was insane, but it still fell off because if you're not managing your money correctly, you'll still do the same things and you'll still struggle financially with the things that you were still struggling with financially at the lower amount of money that you have. You'll still do the same thing if you don't manage it correctly. And so that's why it's not always about how much money you make. And granted, there are some times where even the amount of money you make, it might not be enough to pay the bills depending on what you have. But sometimes more than likely it is always, what you're managing and how you're doing it. And lifestyle inflation is definitely probably the worst one on here because, if that doesn't get fixed, I mean that kills everything else in the foundation. And that really sets up everything. Is making sure you do get bonuses and raises that you're using that money wisely. And if you're not, you're gonna fall short. The next mistake we have is not investing early. And honestly, I see a lot of people doing this as well now too. Either one, because they don't know about investing, or they feel like they don't have enough money to invest. And that can be tricky because, nowadays there's so much information online to learn how to invest. So if you're not looking at it, I don't know if you're scared per se or if people just don't know. It's really hard to say, but it also could be because they feel like they don't have enough money to invest. That's why I always recommend people to invest money, you know, as how much they can control and start small. Even if it's only like $5 a month, that's still better than nothing. And I see a lot of people just not investing early enough because, in your 20s, the best thing we have is time. And that stuff will compound a lot. I think, too, a lot of people don't actually know the benefits of compound interest. Like, they can't make sense of the numbers and the math and what it takes because it can be a little tricky in the beginning when you're first learning how to invest. But like the compound interest is insane, and the returns you get years later, like it'll all make sense. And you can't really look at investing in a small short term game. You have to look at it over a long period of time, like 20, 30 years out. And so because of this, I feel like a lot of people also don't look at that. They all want things now, not trying to wait that long. And I get it. You should enjoy your life throughout growing up, but also, you need to have some money to be able to retire and have that money just to be safe. And I feel like this is a very expensive mistake that you're making because we've all spent money on dumb stuff on a daily basis or weekly basis. If you're spending $5 a day on coffee or drinks at your job, every job has like a vending machine. I know you spent money at that vending machine where you go there pretty frequently. We've all done it. Imagine if you took some of that money and you put it into an investment account every week, even if it was only $5 to $10. I know you spend that at the vending machine at work, so I don't want to hear it. You got to invest. You have to get there because investing is so important and starting early is so important. Time is of the essence, and that'll make it all worth it. So definitely invest as much as you can, as comfortable as you can without worrying about the money and trying to take it out. Because even if you did invest all this money, you don't want to try to take it out. You want to make sure it stays there and you never have to go about it. Then the next mistake here is having no emergency fund. Living paycheck to paycheck sucks. And, someone who's been there as well and going through it, it's definitely very hard to save money. Even when people say like 6 to 12 months emergency fund, that is very hard and not easy to do. So really when it comes to me and emergency funds, obviously it depends on sometimes like what the prices are, but I'm not really too big on right away just telling people to have 6 to 12 months of emergency fund because I understand that that's just not always the viable case. But I think you should start slow. I think you should start with at least like $100 or $200, and then if you can get to $1,000, that gives you a little bit more wiggle room. It's not enough to pay for everything, but it's definitely a lot more security in it than just having nothing in there. And if you can get to 6 to 12 months, definitely do that. But those type of emergency funds honestly take years to fund that much. Because emergency funds always can change. You always have to take money out and stuff, and then if you lose the money or have to use it, you have to then replenish it. So that's why I always recommend at least getting to like $1,000. That's really my staple spot, especially in your 20s, where your bills shouldn't be like as much going on as crazy, unless you're like finally in your full career and you're starting to rent and do everything. Then maybe try to get it up there to like 3 months, but 1,000 is definitely my basis, and I think that's the best way to go. The next mistake we have here is only paying the minimum on credit cards. I think credit score is like just so insane now, and with the interest rates on credit cards, we're just falling into more debt, and people are getting this interest racked up. Like credit cards have like a 24% interest rate plus on all of them, and they're banking on people making money by not paying that back. And so even me, I had to, really realign myself when it comes to credit cards because it'll really keep you on track to be in debt forever. And if you are just only paying the minimum payment, you're not really doing anything. You're really just sitting there still paying interest, barely touching the principal, and just doing it so you don't get a late payment on your credit report, which is still good. Don't get a late payment, but still, like only paying the minimum won't help you, and that'll have a crucial impact on your life as you get older. Take it from someone like me who's had late payments on credit, who's had things messed up, and it's still paying the consequences now to this day for some of the mistakes that I made when I was a little bit younger. And because of that, it has changed a lot with my credit and the way I see about credit and the way I talk to people who haven't gotten started yet on credit. I'm making sure I tell them the right thing so they don't end up doing the same mistakes. And so hopefully you never even carry a balance. You're paying everything off on time, paying the statement balance right away. You're not carrying on debt because credit cards will help you fall into a very big hole and trap, and it's something that I wouldn't recommend on anybody. Not even my worst enemy, because debt is unbelievable with credit cards, and that's usually the main thing where it comes from. Doing things like that, and so you want to make sure that you're not keeping these balances on these credit cards because it'll only make your life worse. The next mistake is financing things that lose value, and this is mainly about cars. I won't lie, y'all. Like cars, it's nice to have a nice car. I won't lie to you. Having a nice car is cool. Even sometimes I think about it. But these cars, man, especially nowadays in this year of 2026, they just don't work the same and do the same things. And if you are in a bind where you're paying, honestly, if you're paying more than $300 a month on a car payment, I mean, that money is just being blown over and over because the car that you have is losing value. It's not really gaining anything, and you're paying so much on it that money could have been used better else. I know people who will pay off a car finally, get everything going, and then go and get a new car and have a payment once again. And that's making you fall in that trap where you start to lose value in money now because of this. And like I said, like even for me, I want a nice car in the future. I definitely do. Anyone who loves cars, I understand that. However, I understand too that I have to make sure when I do get a car, one, I really only want cars in cash. I don't think I ever want to finance a car again. And then two, like even if you do finance, make sure it's a really good interest rate, and make sure like You have money that's enough to pay for it, even if it breaks down. Because a lot of people have enough money to pay for the car. It's like monthly payment, which is good, but still, when that car breaks down and something's wrong, they don't have the extra money for that stuff. And cars rack up and get expensive, especially if they're not being taken care of. Make sure you get your oil changes. Make sure you're catching up on all the things it needs. Make sure you're getting it inspected. Make sure you're getting it checked out so you don't run into these issues when they become really worse. And it's a lot harder to do these things and keep it maintained and checked out if you're spending so much money on a car payment. And I've learned that firsthand. I'm paying on a car payment right now, plan to get that paid off by the end of this year, and I cannot wait. And after this, I will never want to have a car payment again unless like I'm older and have really nice credit in my car. Interest rate is like 3-4%. Then we'll probably talk because that's a pretty good deal. But anything over like 8%, nah, I don't think it's worth it. So definitely try not to finance things that lose value. This is mainly about cars, but this could also be other things. Like you're financing with budgeting or not budgeting, buy now pay later things like Klarna, Affirm. You're financing couches, you're financing vacations. Like these things can definitely add up too if you're not paying them back on the right time, and you're just gaining up the interest. The next financial mistake is really not having no financial goals. No intention and just vibing out here with money. And I see this a lot of people too, because sometimes I ask people like, "What are your goals for finances?" And a lot of people can't answer that. They genuinely don't know. And so I think now start planning some goals. Like, how much money do you want to have saved or invested by the end of this year? How much money do you want to have when you retire? What's a good amount of money that's enough for to sustain your lifestyle when you're older? Like these questions need to be answered. You have to figure these stuff out. Because if not, you're not going to be able to know where to go because you don't even have a goal in mind. We all have to set goals and work to achieve them. And without a goal, you don't really know what you're doing. Like even in school, doing all those homework assignments and doing all those practice exams and quizzes, they're all meant for the test. Like the build up is the test. You don't just do all these quizzes for nothing and then that's it. And then you just go to a new topic. No, you do all those quizzes for a test. And the same things with money. You grab all this money and you do these investments and you do these things to eventually get to retirement. That's like 30% of a way of life right there is live, work, get money, enjoy life, and then retire. And then whatever after that, it is what it is. And that's always been the life cycle. And so now like you have to have these goals. You have to figure these things out to know how to get there. Because if you don't have the vision in place and a plan to execute it, you're not gonna do anything with it. So definitely have some goals. Figure these things out. Because money without direction just disappears. And you don't want that. So the next financial mistake that we have is honestly trusting the wrong advice. I think this is very important as well. As in your 20s, especially if you're doing really well, you'll tend to have people now who want to all give you advice. And you understand they're coming from a good place, but a lot of people can't really give you the advice that you need. I'll be honest. If it's a person that's not really in the position that you're in or is not showcasing the lifestyle that you want, sometimes it's going to be really hard to take their advice because they haven't dealt with the things that you need. If someone's all in debt and has their credit messed up and, can't pay bills all the time, but, you have money, you have an emergency fund, stuff like that, and they're trying to give you advice, they can't really give you advice. You can't really listen to them because they're not in the position that you want them to be in, that you would try to be in. And so, like, that's just not going to help you out. So I would advise to definitely stay away from the wrong advice. Even on YouTube, a lot of YouTubers, give advice that night might not be the best for you, and it might not be trustworthy. Even my advice, sometimes you might not trust it. But these are just my thoughts, and what I think will help people. But if you disagree with them, no worries. You know what I mean? I definitely understand that. Nothing wrong with that. If you feel like my advice is wrong and you feel like you trust someone else, for sure, nothing wrong with that opinion. But I definitely agree that you shouldn't always take advice from everybody because that can definitely cause issues, especially if they're not living the life that you want to live and you don't want to go with that. And then now the last one of the worst financial mistakes, honestly, is ignoring your 401k match. I see so many people who aren't investing in 401k, and it baffles me now to this point. I'll be honest, because the 401k is the best investment you could ever make. Anything. It's better than a Roth IRA. It's better than an emergency fund. It's literally free money, especially if you get a really good match. Now, if your company doesn't like match it or anything, then it might not be good. But ignoring that match is crazy because it's literally free money, and a lot of people don't contribute enough. Whatever the match is, like if it's 50% of up to 6%, you need to go 6% and live off 94% of your income. You have to, because you want the highest match possible, and it's free money, and that money grows so much faster compared to a Roth IRA. And a Roth IRA is still good to have. It's still good to max that out too, but the 401k is definitely the worst financial mistake on here as well. It's a part of lifestyle inflation, because you need that money. It's literally double the money every time you get paid, and people still aren't utilizing it to their advantage, and it's causing this disruption, you know. And I really generally believe so much in a 401k, so much. I've seen the money it makes, I've seen how it doubles, and I just will never not have one as long as I'm living, a job that matches it. And so, my advice to everyone is check that 401k match. It might not seem like a lot, or it might be difficult to set up in the moment, because sometimes, they can be a little difficult figuring it out and with all the numbers and stuff. But you have to do it. You have to set it up. You have to know what stocks you then pick in the 401k, because that can also be a mistake. Is you set up a 401k, but you have it investing in the wrong things. There's definitely wrong stocks and ETFs on there that you do not want to be invested in a 401k. My best bet is to go with the S&P 500 on your 401k. It won't automatically be like a VU, but it'll be like a FXAIX, which is Fidelity S&P 500. But it might be something different depending on who you have. But definitely go with the standard S&P 500. I think that's your best bet with 401ks, and you have to do that. So these are some of the worst financial mistakes to make in your 20s. Don't let it ruin you. Don't let it get to you. We all have work to do. So I don't want you to think all these are perfect and you're going to be able to do all this in one moment, because life is not like that. Life comes with its ups and downs, and it's going to take time to do some of these, and that's okay. You just have to accept that, keep moving forward, and continue working.